Alright, I have a confession to make. After I finished heat treating the blank last night, I came out here about an hour later after it cooled. And I was just going to clean up, but you know what, I started working on it again and I didn't video anything. So it looks a bit different than the last time you saw it. Give you a nice close-up of it here. And obviously I can't go back and show you how I did all this because it's all done, but I will definitely just give you a quick run through. If you look at the blade here, you see how I carved out the finger profile there to fit my hand? Might be wondering how I did that. Well, most of the stuff I did here was with a Dremel bit. I used a drum sanding bit right here, and I basically just went at it for a little bit like this. You just take it and you just, nice and easy, just keep going over and over and over the same part, and eventually you dig those little profiles down in there. It took a long time, and this sanding drum is looking a little worn out here, but it doesn't look half bad. I don't like the thickness of the handle, especially when I wrap this. It's going to be a little too thick for me, so I'm thinking I'm going to have to grind this down probably another like 1/4 inch here to get what I'm looking for. The might have noticed here, my little thumb thingy, whatever you want to call it. There's probably a name for it, I just don't know it. But I got that nice little pivoted profile in it with carbide bit on the Dremel. Oh yeah, take a look at the Dremel here too. This isn't your typical normal handheld Dremel. This is actually a rotary tool. Use it cutting drywall, cutting a lot of things actually. You could cut pretty much anything with it. But it's pretty high powered, and what I've got on here is just it's a Dremel attachment. It's just a hose that comes off and goes to your little chock up here, and you just throw your bit in there. I actually find it a little more handy than a Dremel. You're not holding this big tool all the time, just your little hose. Just gotta be careful you don't kink it around too much, or it'll burn itself out. But aside from that, I did not use the carbide bit for these holes here. I actually just took it down to the drill press and just punched those right through with the drill, and then cleaned out the sides of the holes with a metal cutting disc on the Dremel. As far as the serrations on the front of the blade here, I just did that by hand, same carbide bit. I just basically cut it into the blade a little bit, and then sharpened up the profile on them just by tilting it back and forth on each one. And if you look real close, you can see it, kinda. I don't know if it's gonna focus this close to the camera, but. And obviously after that, the knife doesn't look nearly as rough anymore because I went over it all with a new belt sander belt. And I've got belts that go down to 320 grit, which is pretty fine. I mean, it's not quite wet sanding at that point, but it's getting close. And basically I worked it down from 120 to 240 to the 320, which is, like I said, the finest belt I've got. And I cannot stand hand sanding things, so if I don't have a belt sander to do it, I'm not doing it. So from there, I'm basically just jumping right from the 320 grit sanding belt to polishing it, which I've already started here on the side of the blade. You can kind of see how it's got that shiny appearance to it. And that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm just going to take this over and I'm going to polish up the whole blade. Give you a quick look here at what I'm using. I've got this polishing compound. It's actually a very high grit. It's a bit above emery is what we're talking. So it's actually going to have some decent cutting power, which is why I was pleasantly surprised when I had put the wheel to the blade here. Almost immediately you could see that mirror finish form as it started cutting stuff off right here. The only problem is if you have any irregularities on the metal surface, if you haven't used a fine enough sandpaper like I did, then you're going to notice those come out a lot when you polish it, because the rest of the blade is going to, the rest of the surface is just going to be mirror smooth, and then you're just going to have these divots, which you can kind of see right along the edge here and there. But you know what? Good enough is good enough. And then what I'm using here is a Sissel wheel, just on the angle grinder, same angle grinder I used before. I just jammed it onto the chuck, and this is what I've been using. I mean, It's a monster. It makes so much noise when you turn it on. But it's got a lot of power when you get the disc that big on here. The rotational force on the edge of that disc is just incredible. I was using smaller discs at first and it just took forever to get any kind of polish on things. But now this thing, it's like, I actually got my finger in it once and it almost tore my fingernail off. I wear gloves using it now. You learn your lesson. Whatever the case. Let me hook this up to the mount here and I'll start polishing this blade.